The Plaza Hotel stands as a shimmering white castle on the edge of Central Park, a French Renaissance fantasy with turrets, mansard roofs, and gilded moldings. For more than a century, it has been a stage set where the world's wealthy and powerful acted out dramas of romance, scandal, and tragedy. Countless tourists have photographed its facade and dreamt of Eloise exploring its hallways. Films and novels use the hotel as a backdrop for romance and opulence. Yet behind the crystal chandeliers and marbled hallways lies a shadow history that most guests never hear about. Hidden beneath the linen and silver is a tale of violence, ruin, eccentricity, and greed. The story of America's most famous hotel is a study in contrast, where glamour and darkness coexist. From the day the first stone was laid, the Plaza has been associated with tragedy, murder, and the lives of those who lost everything within its walls. In the early 20th century, New York was growing at a staggering pace. The Upper East Side was transforming from farms into grand mansions, and the intersection of Fifth Avenue and Central Park South was becoming the address to have. The first hotel built on the site in the late 19th century was a modest structure, but the owners had bigger dreams. They commissioned the architect, Henry Janeway Hardenberg, who designed the opulent Dakota, to construct a new monument to wealth and luxury. In just 27 months, the new plaza rose from the ground at a cost of $12.5 million, an astronomical figure for the era. Its elegant base, rising above a shaft of white brick and marble, supported a picturesque mansard roof lined with copper and dormers. When it opened on October 1st, 1907, the press marveled at its modern ventilation system, thermostats, and refrigeration equipment, and declared it the most luxurious hotel in New York. From its inception, the plaza was associated with misfortune. During construction in July 1906, tensions flared between union ironworkers and cheaper non-union laborers. The developers hired retired police officers to guard the site. One morning, a group of union men, angered at the presence of non-union workers, attacked. They hurled metal bolts from an upper floor and dragged 3 guards into an elevator shaft. Michael Butler, a retired policeman and father of 6, was struck in the head with an iron projectile and thrown from the 8th story to a platform below. He suffered fractured ribs, a broken breastbone, and internal bleeding, and later died. 2 other guards, John J. Cullen and William O'Toole, were severely beaten. A trial declared the death an accident, but witnesses whispered that the union men swore silence and never admitted the crime. Thus, the plaza was literally built on a murder scene, and some said this bloodshed cursed the hotel from the start. Tragedy continued with the arrival of the first guest. Alfred Gwynn Vanderbilt, scion of one of America's wealthiest families, checked into the plaza on its opening day. He dined in the Palm Court under the shimmering skylight and marveled at the grandeur. But less than 8 years later, he boarded the ocean liner Lusitania and perished when a German torpedo sent the ship to the bottom of the Atlantic. Many superstitious New Yorkers whispered that the plaza's first guest foreshadowed a pattern. Guests who celebrated success within its walls often met untimely ends. The list of misfortunes grows as one reads through the hotel's guest registry. The plaza's guests included the world's richest families, and among them were the Woolworths. The 5-and-dime department store fortune was as glittering as the hotel's chandeliers, but it hid deep sorrow. In 1917, Edna Woolworth, tormented by her husband's infidelity, took a suite at the plaza. While her teenage daughter Barbara slept in an adjoining room, Edna swallowed poison in her bathroom. Barbara awoke to find her mother dead and screamed for help. The press called it a tragedy of wealth and said the plaza's walls had witnessed another life lost. 9 years later, the family returned to the hotel under happier circumstances when Edna's sister Jenny brought her lavish jewelry collection to a suite. She planned to wear pearls and diamonds to an evening gala, but while she was bathing, a thief slipped in. The robber carefully ignored imitation jewels and took only the genuine gems, including strings of pearls valued at hundreds of thousands of dollars. A private detective eventually recovered the jewels and arrested a suspect, but the incident reinforced the notion that great fortune could vanish in an instant at the plaza. Not all tragedies were born of human malice or misbehavior. Some emerged from eccentricity and vanity. In the years after the hotel opened, a group of wealthy elderly women moved into suites and never left. They became known as the 39 Widows because their number hovered around that figure for decades. These women, including European aristocrats and American heiresses, treated the hotel as their personal home. Staff whispered that their rent-controlled suites, though expensive, provided a steady income that kept the hotel afloat during the Great Depression. Among them was Princess Vilma Lwow-Parlegy, a Hungarian noblewoman who arrived in 1909 with 12 servants and exotic animals. She asked management for permission to keep an ibis, an alligator, and a bear in her suite, and promised the damage was unlikely because she would pay for repairs. Her lion cub Goldfleck lived in the bathtub and took leashed walks through Central Park, startling passers-by. When Goldfleck died in 1912, she held a funeral in the hotel and buried him at a pet cemetery. Unpaid bills eventually forced the princess to leave, and she died in obscurity. Another widow, Kentucky heiress Clara Belle Walsh, was famed for hosting lavish parties and is often credited with inventing the cocktail party. At a birthday celebration in the plaza's Persian room, she declared that snapdragon bouquets looked more suitable for a gangster's funeral. 5 months later, she died in her suite, and guests whispered that she had tempted fate with her remark. The most infamous widow was Fanny Lowenstein, a cantankerous woman whose antics terrorized staff. She moved into the plaza in the late 1950s after the death of her stockbroker husband and secured a rent-controlled suite that she refused to give up. Wearing a long purple dress, rings, and heavy perfume, she paraded through the halls demanding special treatment. She insisted on daily dusting of her crown moldings and belittled maids if a speck of dust remained. Once, after an argument with management, she relieved herself on the rug in the palm court while outraged diners looked on. She sued the hotel over defective carpeting and later claimed that new paint in her suite was toxic, prompting inspections that found no hazard. When Donald Trump sought to buy the plaza in the 1980s, lawyers warned him that dealing with Fanny would be more difficult than dealing with his wives. He conceded that after meeting her, he was soaked in sweat. Eventually, he offered her a larger suite with a Steinway piano to move out, but she held out until she chose to relocate to the Park Lane. She died at age 85 in 1992, and employees continued to blame her ghost when things went wrong. Waiters would shout, "Fanny!" when a tray slipped, a ritual that continues to this day. The plaza's male owners and investors were not immune to despair. Harry S. Black, the businessman who spearheaded the hotel's construction and served as president of the Plaza Operating Company, invested heavily in real estate and used Plaza stock to finance his ventures. When the stock market crashed in October 1929, his fortune evaporated. On October 18th, he drew a bath in his suite and tried to drown himself. Servants found him unconscious and revived him, but he later went to his Long Island home and shot himself. His death illustrated how quickly the gilded world of the plaza could turn to dust. Another tragic figure was Alfred Vanderbilt. After enjoying the hotel, he died on the Lusitania. The pattern of opulent living followed by sudden calamity seemed to repeat throughout the hotel's history. Eccentricity sometimes created dark comedies within the hotel walls. The wealthy Russian princess who owned pet owls and a lion may be the most extravagant, but there were others. One guest asked that an alligator be allowed to roam a suite, promising it would not escape. Another insisted that his parrot dine at his table. These stories may seem amusing, yet they reveal a deeper truth. The hotel became a world unto itself, insulated from the realities of outside life. Residents could indulge their every whim, no matter how outrageous. This insularity sometimes encouraged self-destructive behaviors, from heavy drinking to compulsive gambling. Staff members often enabled these behaviors because the guests paid well and tipped generously. But the accumulation of bizarre demands and tragedies contributed to the belief that the hotel was haunted. Employees reported seeing shadowy figures in hallways or hearing disembodied voices whispering names. Some claimed that Michael Butler's ghost still wandered the lower floors near where he was killed, while others spoke of Fanny Lowenstein's spectral presence causing lights to flicker. While the early decades of the plaza were marked by eccentric characters and isolated tragedies, the 1970s brought a crime wave that shattered the hotel's aura of safety. New York City was struggling with budget crises, rising crime rates, and decaying infrastructure. Even the plaza, with its uniformed doormen and gilded entrance, could not escape. In 1972, more than a dozen staff members were taken hostage during an armed robbery. The intruders forced employees to open the hotel safe and stole $265,000, including an emerald tiara intended for a wealthy guest. Hotel managers quietly paid the ransom and tried to keep the incident out of the press. But news leaked that one of America's most famous hotels had been invaded. The following year, a threatening note signed by Black September promised to blow up the hotel unless a ransom was paid. Police and bomb squads descended on the building, but the note turned out to be a hoax perpetrated by a disgruntled house painter seeking attention. However, the threat added to a sense of vulnerability. Other crimes followed. A respected doctor staying at the plaza was beaten and robbed in his suite. Couples strolling through the corridors were held up at gunpoint. Prostitutes mugged a politician outside the entrance, and Central Park South gained the nickname Prostitutes Promenade because women working the street targeted wealthy hotel guests. Throughout the 1970s and early 80s, there were bomb scares and false alarms. Security guards began searching handbags and briefcases at the entrance, a practice once unthinkable at the plaza. Patrons found comfort in the Palm Court's tea service but looked over their shoulders. The hotel's image of invulnerability had been shattered, and whispers of the curse resurfaced. Amid these crises, the plaza changed hands several times. In the mid-1950s, hotel magnate Ben L. Silberstein purchased it for $5.5 million. He was known for strict discipline and lavish entertaining. His daughter was married to the financier Ivan Boesky, and after Silberstein died of lymphoma in 1979, his daughters inherited the plaza. They fought with each other and with management. Boesky encouraged them to sell, and an intense bidding war ensued. Oilman Marvin Davis and the Sultan of Brunei both offered around $135 million, but the sisters initially favored Davis because he was an American. Davis later discovered the building required expensive repairs and sold his stake to the Sultan, who had long coveted the hotel. Local gossip insisted that the Sultan planned to turn the plaza into a private palace, prompting suspicion and protests. In 1988, Donald Trump, a real estate developer known for his flamboyant style, bought the plaza for $407 million, using heavy loans. He declared the acquisition a dream and placed his then-wife Ivana in charge as president of the hotel. She oversaw a $30 million renovation that added marble floors, gilded fixtures, and opulent suites, but also sparked tension with staff and architects. Trump treated the plaza as a trophy property and bragged about hosting parties with celebrities. But the debt used to finance the purchase proved unsustainable. By 1992, the hotel owed more than $500 million, far exceeding its value. In one desperate attempt to raise cash, Trump's team installed a secret room with one-way mirrors behind a wall near a banquet hall. Executives watched potential buyers tour the building, hoping to glean intelligence on their bidding strategies. Despite these maneuvers, the bank seized control, and Trump's ownership ended in bankruptcy court. He later admitted the plaza was a financial disaster that he bought for its symbolic value. In the early 2000s, the plaza faced its most radical transformation. Developers purchased the hotel with the intention of converting most of it into condominiums. The plan was to sell luxury apartments for tens of millions of dollars while retaining a smaller hotel with fewer rooms. Construction crews gutted the building, removed original details, and replaced them with cheaper materials. When buyers moved in, they found doorknobs missing, floors uneven, and walls thin. Residents sued the developers, alleging shoddy workmanship and misrepresented amenities. Many units remained empty, used as investment vehicles rather than homes. During the financial crisis of 2008, the value of the apartments plummeted, and 8 of the 30 worst money-losing sales in Manhattan from 2007 to 2017 occurred at the plaza. The conversion that promised to restore the hotel's glory instead exposed it to further ridicule, as investors lost millions and tourists lamented the hollow feel of the renovated building. While the building's fortunes fluctuated, the ghost stories and legends persisted. Staff members continued to claim that Michael Butler's spirit haunted the lower levels, and some said they saw a figure in an old policeman's uniform near the service elevators. Guests reported a woman in a long purple dress wandering the corridors, believed to be the ghost of Fanny Lowenstein. Lights flickered in her former suite, and phones rang with no one on the other end. Musicians rehearsing in the Oak Room heard faint notes from a piano when the room was empty. Guides leading tours through the hotel told visitors about the haunted Palm Court and the voices of widows complaining about the temperature. These tales became part of the plaza's lore, adding a supernatural dimension to its reputation. The plaza has also been a nexus for espionage and intrigue. In 1917, Count Johann von Bernstorff, the German ambassador to the United States, lived at the plaza while he attempted to influence American policy during World War I. He met secretly with Paul Bolo Pasha, a Frenchman working for German intelligence, and discussed ways to broker a separate peace that would benefit Germany. Bolo Pasha was later arrested by French authorities for treason and executed. During the same era, the hotel hosted wealthy patrons who sought to shape global politics over dinner and drinks. In the Cold War period, various diplomats and businessmen continued to conduct discreet meetings in suites, and some suspected the hotel was bugged by intelligence agencies. The combination of wealth, power, and secrecy made it fertile ground for intrigue. One cannot tell the dark story of the plaza without mentioning the tragedies of the Woolworth family in more detail. Edna Woolworth's suicide shocked society. She had married Franklin Hutton, a financier, and their marriage was filled with strife and infidelity. Seeking refuge, she took a suite at the plaza and invited friends to dine with her before retiring early. Later that night, she swallowed poison. When her daughter Barbara discovered her body the next morning, she became hysterical, and her screams echoed through the hallway. Newspapers reported that the hotel's staff and guests were shaken by the scene. A funeral was held quietly, and the family never fully recovered from the scandal. Barbara later married an actor and attempted to move beyond the trauma, but the memory of the plaza remained. Jenny Woolworth's jewel theft 9 years later added another chapter to the family's misfortunes. She had been relaxing in her suite, leaving her pearl necklaces and diamond rings on a dressing table when an intruder slipped inside. He took real pearls but left imitations, showing knowledge of jewelry. When Jenny emerged from her bath, she screamed, but the thief had vanished. Police suspected an inside job, and a private detective named Harry F. Thaw recovered the gems at a pawn shop. Thaw himself became a suspect because evidence suggested he knew the thief, but he was acquitted. The episode revealed how even the richest guests were vulnerable to criminals within the hotel. It also underscored the plaza's role as a magnet for schemers who targeted the wealthy. As decades passed, the plaza became a stage for cultural moments. Scott Fitzgerald used it as the setting for a climactic argument between Gatsby and Tom Buchanan in his novel The Great Gatsby. The Beatles held a press conference there in 1964, attracting hordes of screaming fans. The plaza hosted high society weddings and lavish New Year's Eve balls. But behind the glitter lay darker tales. In 1925, a Woolworth heiress accidentally left her sweet key in the door and lost a 10-carat diamond ring. The thief was never caught. In 1926, thousands of dollars worth of jewels were stolen while Jenny Woolworth was bathing. In the mid-20th century, Santa Kaimes, a con artist and murderer, checked into the plaza to hide stolen goods. She stashed a corpse in a duffel bag and stored it in the hotel's luggage room while she fled. When investigators discovered the bag, they uncovered a murder plot that shocked the city. These stories remind us that the plaza has always been a place where extremes meet: wealth and crime, love and betrayal. The 1970s were particularly turbulent. In addition to armed robbery and hoaxes, the hotel became a hub for prostitution and drug deals. The prostitutes' promenade outside the entrance was frequented by sex workers who targeted businessmen leaving late meetings. Some politicians were mugged by these women, causing scandal. To address safety concerns, management hired additional security and installed cameras. Yet crime remained a persistent problem. Newspapers ran headlines about the once grand hotel's descent into chaos. Management feared the negative publicity would drive away wealthy guests. To counter this, they hosted charity balls and celebrity events, hoping to restore the plaza's reputation. However, the underlying issues of citywide crime and economic decline were beyond the hotel's control. In those years, the plaza mirrored New York's struggles. The installation of a secret surveillance room during Donald Trump's ownership has become another infamous chapter. Hidden behind a wall, the room allowed executives to observe potential buyers during due diligence tours. They hoped to gauge reactions and adjust negotiation strategies accordingly. One former executive said that watching bidders comment on the hotel's condition through a one-way mirror felt like espionage. Despite these tactics, the sale process did not go as planned. The banks ultimately sold the hotel to a group of foreign investors led by the Saudi billionaire Prince Al-Walid bin Talal and Singapore's Kwek Leng Beng. Trump lost control of his prized trophy, and the secret room became a symbol of the desperation that accompanied his debt load. Another dark element entered the plaza's history in the 21st century, when India's Sahara Group, controlled by Subrata Roy, purchased a majority stake. Roy used the hotel as part of a global portfolio that included properties in London and elsewhere. But in 2014, he was arrested in India on charges of running an illegal $4 billion investment scheme. Authorities alleged he had defrauded small investors and used their money to purchase luxury assets. While detained in New Delhi's Tihar jail, Roy received a court-approved arrangement to negotiate the sale of the plaza from a jail conference room. He sought to raise $1.6 billion to repay investors and secure his release. The image of the hotel's owner conducting business from a prison cell added to the sense that the plaza carried a curse. Eventually, a Qatari hospitality company purchased a majority stake, paying around $600 million. The hotel's future once again depended on foreign investors and the shifting sands of global finance. Through all these upheavals, the plaza remained a symbol of New York City. Children still pressed their faces to the glass to glimpse the palm court. Couples posed for wedding photos beneath the grand ballroom's crystal chandelier. Yet the hotel's dark history reveals a pattern of hubris and downfall. The building's grandeur attracted those who sought status and power, but the same qualities lured criminals and con artists. Owners dreamed of fortune, only to be undone by debt. Guests sought privacy, only to discover that secrets rarely remain hidden. The plaza's marble floors absorbed the footsteps of presidents, princes, and criminals alike. Its walls heard whispered confessions and desperate cries for help. Its chandeliers glittered above celebrations and clandestine deals. As one moves through the lobby, it is easy to imagine the ghosts of former residents. Perhaps a young Vanderbilt in a top hat glances nervously at the clock, unaware of his fate on an ocean liner. Maybe Princess Vilma's lion still wanders the corridors at night, its claws clicking on marble. One might hear Fanny Lowenstein's rasping voice scolding a bellhop. These specters remind us that the plaza is more than a hotel. It is a repository of human drama. To understand it fully, we must look beyond the polished brass and velvet ropes to the human stories that unfolded here. The dark story of America's most famous hotel is not just a series of scandals, but a portrait of the city itself, with its cycles of boom and bust, glamour and grit. An understanding of the plaza's dark story also requires an appreciation of its lavish design. Architect Henry Janeway Hardenberg envisioned the hotel as a chateau transplanted to Manhattan. Its facade of white brick and marble, topped by a green copper roof, evoked the Loire Valley. Massive ironwork lamps flanked the front doors, illuminating the carriage entrance where horses once waited. Inside, craftsmen from Europe carved mahogany and applied gold leaf. The lobby was dressed in white marble with mosaic floors, leading to the Palm Court, a double-height space bathed in light from a curved glass ceiling. Rows of palm trees lined the room, creating a tropical oasis in the middle of New York. Guests sipped tea at wrought iron tables while listening to a string quartet. The oak room, paneled in dark wood imported from Germany, offered a contrast with its masculine warmth and served as a private club for gentlemen. The grand ballroom, with its soaring ceiling and crystal chandeliers, hosted debutante balls, political fundraisers, and movie premieres. Every architectural detail conveyed the impression that money could insulate one from the chaos of the city. Yet the ornate halls also served as the backdrop for heartbreak and deception. Behind the gilded moldings lurked secret panels and hidden stairways that allowed staff to move unnoticed, enabling both discretion and intrigue. The plaza's reputation as a palace attracted not only humans, but also animals, and their stories add another layer to its history. Princess Vilma Luof-Parlagi's lion was not the only creature to roam its halls. Over the years, various guests tried to bring exotic pets, testing management's patience. One oil baron insisted that his peacocks perch on the balcony of his suite, their cries echoing into Central Park. Another wealthy matron smuggled a cheetah up the service elevator, only to be told the animal had to be removed after it chased a maid. In the 1920s, a Broadway producer kept monkeys in his bathroom, claiming they brought him good luck on opening nights. Staff who worked for decades still reminisce about parrots perched on chandeliers and dogs wearing diamond collars. While these anecdotes may seem whimsical, they point to a deeper truth. The hotel was a haven for the excesses of the wealthy, where normal boundaries dissolved. The presence of wild animals in a luxury hotel underscores the surreal world that existed within its walls and hints at the emotional turbulence of those who lived there. For Princess Vilma, the lion represented both status and companionship, a pet to fill the void created by loneliness and exile. When she left the hotel destitute, she lost not only her home, but also the identity she had crafted there. Beyond the exotic pets and widows' antics, the plaza played host to many of the 20th century's most notorious figures. During Prohibition, gangsters and bootleggers used the hotel as a meeting place. Its bars and suites became scenes of deals conducted over whiskey smuggled through secret tunnels. Notorious mobsters like Oni Madden and Lucky Luciano were rumored to have dined in the Oak Room while planning bootlegging routes. Federal agents trailed them through the lobby, but the criminals were often protected by their connections. Rumors circulated of hidden safes in suites where money and weapons were stored. Meanwhile, respectable businessmen and politicians conducted their own negotiations just a few doors away, unaware or unwilling to acknowledge the lawless transactions happening nearby. The hotel thus served as a microcosm of New York, where high society rubbed shoulders with the underworld. During Prohibition, the line between legitimate enterprise and organized crime blurred, and the plaza's marble corridors echoed with whispers of bribery and betrayal. These clandestine activities contributed to the aura of secrecy that still envelops the hotel. The plaza also provided refuge to creative spirits whose lives were tinged with sadness. F. Scott Fitzgerald and his wife Zelda were frequent guests. Fitzgerald, fascinated by wealth and its corrupting influence, used the hotel to illustrate the emptiness behind opulence. In The Great Gatsby, he set Tom and Daisy Buchanan's climactic confrontation with Jay Gatsby in a plaza suite. The characters sweat in the summer heat, their tempers fray, and secrets explode. Outside the windows, the city pulses with life, but inside the suite, their world crumbles. Fitzgerald drew on his own experiences. He and Zelda argued at the hotel, their volatile relationship mirroring the characters he created. Zelda once attempted to swim in the fountain outside the plaza wearing only her slip, causing a scandal. Their visits to the hotel were filled with drunken nights, extravagant spending, and heartbreak. Fitzgerald's work has become a lens through which we view the Jazz Age's excesses, and the plaza is central to that vision. The hotel thus not only witnessed tragedies, but also inspired art that grappled with the darker side of wealth. Cultural history also brings the Beatles to the plaza. In February 1964, the band arrived for their first American concert. Hundreds of screaming fans surrounded the hotel, girls fainting and police struggling to maintain order. John, Paul, George, and Ringo held a press conference in one of the suites, joking with reporters about their hair and fame. While this moment appears lighthearted, it underscores how the plaza often became the epicenter of intense public emotion. The same grand rooms that hosted society balls now contained pop culture phenomena, reflecting the evolving nature of celebrity. This ability to adapt allowed the hotel to remain relevant, but it also meant the plaza was constantly adjusting to new waves of fame, often at great cost. Security had to be increased, and the hotel's infrastructure strained under the weight of modern demands. As the crowds outside cheered for the Beatles, some hotel staff worried about the wear on the marble floors and the integrity of the facade. The tension between preserving tradition and accommodating change is a recurring theme in the plaza's story. The 1970s crime wave deserves further exploration because it marked a sharp decline in the plaza's sense of security. The armed robbery of 1972 was not a simple heist. It was a sophisticated operation. The robbers, disguised as delivery workers, entered through service doors. They knew the location of the safe and timed their actions to coincide with shift changes. They threatened employees with guns, tied them up, and made them lie on the floor while they emptied the safe. They took not only cash, but also jewels and negotiable bonds. Several employees were beaten and later suffered nightmares and anxiety. The perpetrators were never caught, adding to the sense of violation. In the aftermath, management hired private investigators and installed new alarm systems. Yet the following year, the hoax bomb threat created chaos again. Police evacuated guests and searched the building for explosives while bomb dogs sniffed through the ballroom. For hours, the hotel's grand facade was lined with emergency vehicles, and television cameras broadcast images of frightened guests in bathrobes on the street. When it emerged that the threat was a prank by a painter seeking attention, many questioned how easily the hotel could be disrupted. The doctor's beating occurred shortly afterward, further undermining trust. These events collectively diminished the plaza's mystique and signaled a broader shift in New York's fortunes. The fear of crime also seeped into the daily routines of guests and staff. Waiters who once moved confidently now looked over their shoulders. Housekeepers walked in pairs when delivering towels. Guests began to request extra locks and insisted that security accompany them to their suites at night. Management responded by hiring more guards and installing cameras, but the psychological damage had been done. News articles dubbed the corridor along Central Park South Prostitutes' Promenade because of the sex workers who plied their trade there. Some of these women approached men leaving the hotel, offering companionship and then robbing them. The mugging of a politician outside the plaza was reported nationally, embarrassing city leaders and prompting calls for police crackdowns. The intersection of wealth and vulnerability became starkly visible. Men who thought the hotel would protect them discovered that crime did not respect gilded gates. These stories further fueled the legend that the plaza was cursed, or at least haunted by the consequences of greed and complacency. Looking back to the early 20th century, one finds that tragedies and scandals at the plaza often intersected with broader social issues. The suicide of Edna Woolworth, for instance, reflects the limited options available to women trapped in unhappy marriages. Unable to obtain a divorce without social ostracism, Edna felt her only escape was death. Her decision to take poison in a luxury hotel underscores the desperation behind the veneer of wealth. Similarly, the jewel thefts remind us that the concentration of wealth invites exploitation. The hotel, despite its security, could not prevent thieves from penetrating its suites. Even when jewels were recovered, the violation lingered. The tragedies of the widows, including Princess Vilma's destitution and Fanny Lowenstein's lonely death, reveal the emptiness that often accompanies wealth without purpose. These women had enough money to live in luxury, yet found themselves isolated, clinging to routines and causing mischief to feel alive. Their antics amuse us, but they also evoke pity. Another dark layer concerns the hotel's staff, many of whom were immigrants or working-class New Yorkers. They witnessed the excesses of the elite while struggling to make ends meet. In the 1920s and 30s, housekeepers and bellhops sometimes lived in crowded tenements, yet they served millionaires who let their exotic animals sleep on silk sheets. During the Great Depression, the steady rent from the widows kept the hotel afloat and preserved jobs, but the workers themselves often lacked job security. Some staff members were injured during the 1972 robbery, but received little support afterwards. Others were laid off during the condominium conversion decades later when rooms were eliminated. Their stories rarely appear in glossy histories, but they are part of the hotel's dark narrative. The exploitation and dismissal of staff for the sake of profit mirror broader labor struggles in American history. At the plaza, marble columns may hide human suffering. The plaza's transformation into condominiums in the 2000s had a profound effect on its cultural identity. Preservationists and loyal New Yorkers protested the conversion, arguing that the hotel was a public institution. They filed lawsuits and sought landmark protections, but developers prevailed. During renovations, century-old details were ripped out. Workers removed the Palm Court skylight and replaced carved woodwork with faux versions. The Oak Room, once a gentleman's club, closed permanently. The Grand Ballroom survived but lost much of its original charm. Apartment buyers complained about poor workmanship, doors that did not latch, cracked marble, plumbing leaks. Because many buyers used the units as investments and rarely visited, entire floors stood dark, diminishing the building's vibrancy. Former guests returned to find a sterile environment lacking the soul of the hotel they remembered. Critics argued that the conversion turned a living institution into a mausoleum of wealth, full of empty boxes owned by foreign investors. The financial misfortune of the investors who resold at a loss became yet another cautionary tale, reinforcing the idea that those who treat the plaza purely as an asset might suffer a curse. Donald Trump's era at the plaza demands deeper scrutiny because it embodies the tension between ego and economics. When he bought the hotel in 1988, he framed it as a patriotic act to keep a piece of America in American hands. He borrowed heavily, convinced that his name and flair could turn the plaza into a profitable showpiece. He appointed Ivana as president, perhaps as both a reward and a trap. Her renovation choices, gold-plated fixtures, heavy draperies, a new suite named after herself, pleased some but angered preservationists who accused her of turning the hotel into a gaudy palace. Meanwhile, Trump used the plaza for his personal publicity. He posed for magazine covers in its lobby and hosted extravagant parties. But behind the scenes, cash flow was a disaster. The interest payments on the loans were higher than the hotel's profits. Trump quietly renegotiated debt and sought investors. He opened that infamous secret room where executives spied on potential buyers, demonstrating his willingness to bend ethical norms. When the bank finally seized the property, Trump cast himself as a victim of lenders. However, he walked away having enjoyed the glamour while others bore the financial loss. This saga illustrates how the plaza attracts larger-than-life personalities who believe they can tame it, only to be humbled. After Trump, the plaza passed through the hands of Prince Al-Walid bin Talal and Singaporean developer Kwek Leng Beng. They attempted to balance profitability with preservation, but the hotel's costs remained high. Then Subrata Roy's Sahara Group entered the picture. The group's acquisition was part of a global expansion financed by deposits from millions of small investors in India. When regulators accused Roy of running an illegal scheme, he was jailed. From his cell, he negotiated the sale of the plaza and other hotels, a surreal image that captured global attention. It suggested that the plaza had become a pawn in international financial dramas. When Qatar's Qatar Hospitality eventually purchased a majority stake for about $600 million, it seemed to resolve the immediate crisis, but questions remained about the hotel's long-term viability. With such high operating costs and a past filled with missteps, would the new owners succeed? Or would they too fall prey to the plaza's history of hubris and failure? The hotel's future appears secure for now, but if history is any guide, new dramas will unfold. Beyond financial scandals and crimes, the plaza has witnessed personal tragedies that reveal the fragility of human life. Consider the actor Peter Finch, who won an Academy Award for his role in Network. On January 14, 1977, he collapsed in the plaza's lobby after giving a television interview and died of a heart attack. The lobby where he fell is the same space where newlyweds pose for photographs and celebrities pass through on their way to parties. The juxtaposition of triumph and death in the same setting underscores the hotel's role as a stage for the extremes of life. Some say his ghost haunts the lobby, accompanied by the spirits of comedian Harpo Marx and composer Sergei Rachmaninoff, both of whom were frequent guests. Whether or not one believes in ghosts, the presence of these stories adds a melancholic air to the gilded hall. The plaza's dark history even intersects with global politics. During World War I, Count von Bernstorff and Bolo Pasha used the hotel as headquarters for secret negotiations aimed at influencing peace terms. The scheme involved German money sent to French politicians through intermediaries. When the plot was uncovered, Bolo Pasha was arrested and executed for treason, and von Bernstorff was expelled. The scandal embarrassed the German government and contributed to American suspicion of foreign agents. During the Second World War, the plaza hosted numerous Allied generals and diplomats. Its rooms served as venues for confidential meetings and strategy sessions. Some fear that the ghosts of wartime intrigue still wander the corridors, whispering about espionage and betrayal. Later, in the Cold War, spies from both sides were rumored to meet in the Oak Bar, trading secrets under the cover of polite conversation. One cannot ignore the curse of the Woolworth heirs. After Edna's death and Jenny's jewel theft, the family's misfortunes continued. Their father, Frank Woolworth, built the Woolworth Building, a Gothic skyscraper across town, but suffered bouts of melancholia. When he died in 1919, he left a fortune, but not much happiness. The tragedies that befell his daughters at the plaza may have been coincidental, but many saw them as part of a pattern. Barbara Hutton, the poor little rich girl, inherited millions and became known for her lavish spending and troubled marriages. She stayed at the plaza frequently, entertaining suitors and hosting parties. Yet she died nearly penniless in a hotel suite in Los Angeles, her fortune squandered. Her story mirrored the plaza's narrative, a veneer of wealth masking deep unhappiness and eventual ruin. The hotel thus served as a mirror for the Woolworths' decline, capturing in microcosm the dangers of unchecked opulence. The plaza's position at the intersection of Fifth Avenue and Central Park South has long made it a symbol of the city's aspirations. When it was built, the hotel signaled that New York could rival European capitals in luxury. It hosted foreign dignitaries, celebrities, and captains of industry. Yet it also highlighted the stark disparities between those who could afford its suites and those who slept in Central Park. During the Great Depression, bread lines snaked through the city while the widows sipped champagne in the Palm Court. In the 1970s, as the city verged on bankruptcy, prostitutes and muggers prowled outside its entrance, while inside guests dined on caviar. The gap between the plaza's interior and exterior worlds has always been wide, and the hotel's dark stories force us to confront that divide. They remind us that glamour often comes at the expense of others, and that wealth cannot shield one from tragedy. After more than a century, the plaza continues to reinvent itself, yet the ghosts linger. The Palm Court has been restored, the Oak Room remains closed, the Grand Ballroom gleams for weddings, and new bars serve modern cocktails. Visitors still flock to the Eloise shop to buy pink dresses and storybooks. But if you listen carefully while walking through the lobby, you might sense the shadows. There might be an echo of Fanny Lowenstein complaining about dust, or a whisper of Edna Woolworth's last words. You may see a reflection of yourself in a gilded mirror and wonder what secrets the walls have absorbed. The plaza endures not because it offers perfection, but because it encapsulates the contradictions of the American dream. Hope and despair, fortune and loss, memory and forgetting. Its dark story is a testament to resilience and a warning about the perils of excess. And as new generations check in, the hotel continues to collect stories, some bright and some dark, ensuring that its legend will never fade. In the end, the enduring power of the plaza lies in its ability to embody both myth and cautionary tale. Films like North by Northwest, The Way We Were, and Home Alone 2 use the hotel as shorthand for sophistication and adventure. Children watch Kevin McAllister roam its corridors and imagine that magic can happen there, while adults remember that behind each cinematic fantasy is a very real institution with a complex past. The plaza's story teaches us that places accumulate the energies of their inhabitants. They are palimpsests upon which generations write their hopes and disappointments. The marbled floors have felt the dance of debutantes and the stumble of drunken revelers. The suites have heard marriage proposals and screams of despair. Each event leaves an imprint, adding layers of meaning that future guests can sense even if they cannot name them. If we pay attention, we may learn from these layers. We may recognize that no amount of wealth or beauty can insulate us from the vagaries of life, and that every palace has a dungeon hidden within. And as the plaza moves further into the 21st century, its legends continue to grow, reminding us that the past is never really past, and that the intersection of splendor and sorrow will always have an address at 59th Street and 5th Avenue. Legend grows each day.